I'll be introducing our next speaker, Andreas Andrico Mourelatos. I'm going to pronounce it with my Spanish accent. If Andreas has a problem, please, Andreas, you tell me later. He's a junior studying physics and philosophy at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. He works with Professor Dr. Scott Hawley on the grant project Christian Responses to the Ascendancy of Artificial Intelligence, as part of the Bridging the Two Cultures of Science and the Humanities II program run by Scholarship and Christianity in Oxford, with funding by Templeton Religion Trust and the Blankemeyer Foundation. So please let's welcome Andreas Mourelatos.
Good morning, everyone. So my family is here today, and we're a Greek family, so I have to say the Spanish pronunciation of my name is very close, and I greatly appreciate it. So today, I just want to start by thanking everyone who's going to present, and the Christian Transhumanist Association for giving me this opportunity. This has been the culmination of something I've been working on for a couple of months, so I'm very excited to give it to you. So today, we're talking about AI creeds and confessions. So what is an AI creed? Well, it is a document created by an organization or to individuals, either governmental or private, with sufficient influence or expertise to be capable of discussing global ethical matters. Second major component is religious versus secular creeds. To address the questions you see on screen, a religious perspective will always remain relevant when forming ethical decisions as the world continues to globalize. This can be achieved through diversity, as well as religious organizations making their own AI creeds, which we will see examples of in just a little bit. Now, I'm going to start things off by going through 4 different of these AI creeds, 2 religious and 2 secular, and defining what makes them special and unique and why I chose to talk about them. And then we'll be talking about the differences and the similarities across the 4. Starting off, the Amnesty International Toronto Declaration. This was a document published on May 16, 2018, and it focuses on human rights rather than technical knowledge. The 4 sections you can see on screen are all about the relationship between states and private sector actors, holding them accountable, protecting citizens, and ensuring justice in a world with machine learning processes everywhere is what this document strives to do. There is a published response about the use of human rights law in relation to ethics by the United Nations University Center for Policy Research, which published an article discussing the problem of generalization when using the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as an ethical foundation for AI. Specific questions that require answers found in creation, if policy and ethical reasoning are some of the weaknesses that were found. Up next, we have the work of Luciano Floridi and Josh Cowles and their paper, A Unified Framework of 5 Principles for AI in Society. Luciano Floridi is the director of the Oxford Internet Institute, and Josh Cowles is a member of the Alan Turing Institute as a part of their data ethics group. 2 men I would say are very well qualified to discuss the ethics of artificial intelligence. The 5 principles they came up with in their paper come from bioethical principles, with an added 5th principle of explicability. This is my favorite of the principles because it defines this idea of a way for the common citizen to understand how AI will be implemented and impact their lives in the public sector. Now we're going to move on to our religious creeds, the first of which is from the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission and their Evangelical Statement of Principles. I'd like to note that the ERLC actually has an office here in Nashville, and that this doctrine is my favorite because of its formal legal structure, and it's very easy to compare to documents such as the Amnesty International Toronto Declaration, like you've seen. And its 12 articles cover a broad range, from medicine to work and public policy, to including one on sexuality, which will have an influence on the way that we perceive artificial intelligence, and it is very important to keep an eye on that. So, big ups to the ERLC. This document has a lot of legitimacy due to its signatories, each coming from a significant theological background, giving them the necessary brain power and knowledge to discuss AI in a theological way. Up next, we have Stephen Proft, the Bishop of the Diocese of Oxford, an appointee to the House of Lords Select Committee on AI. His ethical leanings on AI come out in his keynote seminar, 10 Commandments of AI. What you see in front of you is a summarized list of the 10 Commandments into 5. Proft places an emphasis on transparency, like explicability, very similar to Floridian Cowell's, which I greatly appreciate and wish to recognize to the highest degree. Moving on from the explanations of the contents of the creeds, I will now be discussing how they are both similar and different, starting with the similarities. The universality of human rights makes them a necessary choice across each of the creeds we've seen. They all contain thoughts on human rights, and they've all placed them to the highest degree of importance. Security is just as important as the protection of human rights, because security deals with the how of protection. All groups are concerned with the well-being of humanity in regards to AI. Lastly, and the point that has been most consistent, is the idea of transparency. Transparency means that even the most average, common citizenry can understand the effects and implications and the reasons for the implementation of AI or machine learning processes. It's very important and belongs up there with the other two. So that's going to wrap up our similarities. And now, what I believe is the more important distinctions and differences between the various creeds that we've looked at today. First, the ethical foundation. The Christian creeds come from the gospel, the Word of God, and the thoughts of Christianity as a whole, which have been in place and evolved for thousands of years. Meanwhile, we have secular foundations, which come from a different set of ethical principles, like we saw with the Toronto Declaration and human rights. Due to differences in the ethical foundations, we have a desire for participation coming from that religious perspective. Both the ERLC and Proft expressed explicit need for religious and Christian thinkers to be involved in the conversation in AI ethics. Because of them making those statements, putting out creeds and events such as the one we're at this very weekend, I believe this is a very easily achievable goal, if not already achieved. And lastly, something slightly different, which really came out and was unexpected while I was doing my research, was the religious creed contained this idea of the nature of work, which is basically the concept that a human's value of life is not the summary of their labor, yet there is also a balance and a need for humans to participate in work. So we have this important distinction and need to balance how AI is used to make our lives easier, and also where they can make our lives more difficult. That's going to bring us to the end. So if you'd like links to any of the AI creeds that I've mentioned, go ahead and scan the QR code and it will take you to this presentation. And again, a big thanks for everyone in attendance and the opportunity. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.